You are listening to Fika with Vicky on United Public Radio, 107.7 and 105.3 from New Orleans.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fika. With our guest today, Roku. Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fika. With our guest author today, Jeff Vande Zande. Yes, nod your head. Yes, I did that right. Okay. Jeff is not only the author of fiction novels and short stories, he is also a poet, the creator of award-winning short films, and teaches these things at the Delta College in Michigan. He has 9 books under his belt, one of them being American Poet, which won a Michigan Notable Book Award from the Library of Michigan. But our focus today is The Dance of Rotten Sticks, and it's his first horror novel, and I can't say enough about it. But don't worry, I'll be careful about spoilers. I found the dialogue and characters in this book authentic. They were layered and flawed, but still capable when the job needed to get done. I could feel the atmosphere, and you know how important that is to me. And Jeff is not afraid of breaking your heart. And I know it has to be done, but I don't have to like it. In short, aside from the creepy and crawlies, I feel that this book is about love that goes beyond other worlds, disagreements, and addiction to protect the vulnerable. So thank you, Jeff, for taking a chance on writing a horror novel, because The Dance of Rotten Sticks was entertaining, intense, and definitely made me decide not to spend any time on an isolated island in the future. Welcome to Fika.
Thank you. I am getting an echo on this one.
Oh yeah, now we are getting echo. Okay. Do you want to put your headphones on then?
I will.
I promise you, people, there was no echo before.
Right. I think I am still getting an echo, and it just kind of repeating.
Okay, so it's when you're talking. Am I too close? Let's check. What is your volume on?
It's like there's a delay. So there's something.
Yeah, there's quite often a delay.
So I hear you in the real time, and then I hear you again.
Okay, and I don't know why that is. Okay, did you check your volume settings? Sometimes if they're quite loud, like your headphones or whatever, it will echo. Okay. Go.
No, I don't know if it's something with the Roku or coming through twice, but
the Roku I edited. I don't know. People, if you hear echoing, let us know. Let us know what is happening. Are you hearing echoing now?
it's just that I hear you repeat yourself twice.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm hearing, and you're getting like an echoing. Stick to the story. Are you hearing an echoing out there? Let me know. It'll take them a minute to hear. See, I'm not getting echoing when I talk, but you are? Okay, am I
Yes,
frozen?
I'm getting a repeat, but maybe I can roll with it.
Okay.
So I can talk about the book a little bit.
Yeah, let us know what the book is about. I'm not liking this, and I don't know why. It was perfectly clear what happened to us.
I'm not sure, but yes, the book is a gothic horror set in northern lower Michigan. Can you still hear me?
You cut out halfway through the sentence. Like the beginning of the last sentence, I couldn't hear you at the beginning. And maybe are you fairly far away from the computer?
Should I exit out of the
You
show and come back in?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, I'm going to try that.
Okay, I'm just gonna mute mine for a second and okay, people, everything was clear. Everything was going too amazing. Right? This was the problem. Okay, let's try you again.
I found the issue. It was on my end. I had YouTube open, so I was getting the echo of YouTube. Okay, sorry.
Okay,
I
so
apologize,
fantastic.
everybody. I apologize to you, Vicky. I should have closed that out, and I didn't know what was happening.
Jeff, it's live. They're used to the adventure. Okay.
All right, all right. It's going to be normal from here on out, or as normal as we can.
Exactly.
All right. So, what was the question again?
Just give the audience a brief idea about what the Dance with Rotten Sticks is about, so they can have.
All right.
You know.
Yeah, the Dance of Rotten Sticks tells a story of a really a man who's lost his wife to a tragic accident. He's trying his best to raise his 3 children as a single father, and he's really not doing a great job at it. Alcohol is playing a part in keeping him from being the father that his children really need him to be. Long story short, he thinks that the best thing is to take them to this island for a vacation, and not knowing that it's going to be anything but a vacation based on the supernatural and paranormal forces that are awaiting the family, and possibly even lured them there.
Yes, that is a possibility. And it's I don't think it's just what his children need. It's what he wants to be. He wants to be a good dad. Like with every fiber of his heart, he's just dealing with a lot at the time.
Absolutely. I think he's definitely trying, he's trying to be what his children need him to be, but he's also trying to grieve and cope with the emotions of losing her so suddenly to this car accident. And his job was such, working for the Fish and Wildlife Service, that he was actually home or away from home quite a bit to travel to the mouths of rivers and streams in Michigan to he worked with the lamprey abatement program, keeping the sea lamprey out of the Great Lakes. So he was involved in treating the lamprey larvae, which would hatch in the rivers and eventually go back out into the lake. So he was often away from home. So he was kind of he's not used to this full-time fatherhood.
And it's on a side note, are the sea lampreys really a major problem in Michigan?
Oh, absolutely, in the Great Lakes. My brother-in-law, who worked in that same program, the lamprey abatement program, said that they'll never, as an invasive species, it's not the elimination program, it's the abatement. All they can do is try to keep the numbers down. But yeah, if you want to look at what lamprey do to fish, you can look at pictures on Google, just type in sea lamprey scars, and you'll see how they they call them the vampires of the Great Lakes, that they attach to the sides of these fish and really just kind of open them up like their mouths are an electric can opener. And they will, if enough lamprey were to get on a lake trout, they can kill them.
So they're a horror story all on their own.
Absolutely, yes. If people want to be troubled, don't
go looking it up, people. Yeah. Don't go looking it up.
Go look at pictures of sea lamprey. Now, historically, they don't tend to attach to human beings, but they have from time to time. But typically, it's just they're feeding on fish. But Yeah, they're definitely a problem, but for a horror writer, they're not a problem at all, because they make a good additional monster.
That's it. That's it. It's just that little side monster on the side there. Excuse me. So, as we said, you wrote novels before, of the literary kind of, or were they, and you suddenly decide, I'm not going to say you suddenly, but then you decided to write a horror novel. Why did you do that, Jeff?
I think I've been asked this before, and this is the best answer I can come up with as a writer, and maybe as an older writer. I'm in my 50s now, but you don't get to choose your stories. Your stories choose you. And so I think I was inspired by my friend has a property up near Traverse City in Michigan called Island Lake. And there is an island in the middle of this lake. And I think I was thinking about Isaac, my main character in The Dance of Rotten Sticks, and this idea of this daughter kind of being threatened by a force that they're unaware of. And I thought, what a great setting for a novel to put them on an island. It's pretty in the Gothic horror tradition. It's pretty typical to isolate your characters somewhere, and I really wanted to isolate them somewhere where there wouldn't be access to the internet. Technology, I think, is a problem for writers.
We've discussed that. There's
Right.
no.
Yes. Things that would work as a problem, 30 years ago in a book are kind of like, well, why wouldn't you just Google it? Like, or whatever, so getting rid of technology, it has been a goal for me for this book and its sequel.
And there's always writing them like 40 years in the past, but yes, when someone can call you and they're late, it takes away that suspense of whether they're going to be okay or not. And you check all the DNA and stuff. It takes away a lot. So I can understand that. It did isolate them, but they okay, no spoilers. It's so hard. It's so hard. I want to ask. Have you been? I mean, you were inspired by your friend's property and things, but are you a great reader of horror books or?
This is the other, and I don't admit this with any pride, but I was not a horror reader when I was young, and I think I largely avoided the genre. Partly because I was an English major. I think with my initial novels, I was like, no, I'm going to write the great
American novel.
American novel. And a lot of times what I found is those novels end up being, at least when I write them, a lot of kind of existential navel gazing. Like not much happens in them till maybe the end. It's just kind of a lot of lamenting about the difficulties of the human condition. But one of the things I'm enjoying about horror is kind of the emphasis on plot, that something has to happen, and your characters have to be more proactive, I think, in a way than they can be in literary novels at times. So I'm feeling freed by that, even though you and I had talked off the air about, I think what I brought with me from that literary writing was the ability to develop like three-dimensional characters. You had talked about admiring the family dynamic within this novel, The Dance of Rotten Sticks. And I do think that's a strength that I'm falling back on is there's a great deal of character development in literary novels, and I brought that into horror. And I think it makes you care about the characters more. And so you are more worried about what happens to them and whether or not their blood is spilled.
You did some really good things with this book. Making it about a family. It definitely holds not that I don't care if, a group of young people go to a cottage and get killed, but when there's children involved, my rule of thumb is I don't watch any movies that have axes and children in them at the same time. I'm not going to feel well. So it brings that in. There is the personal growth, and they are such layered characters. No one is completely perfect, and except for the 6-year-old, because he's 6. But but
Right.
it just, and I was going to ask you that, how I know that your brother-in-law helped you out with the U.S. wildlife and forestry
Yeah.
stuff with the lampreys, but how, like you said, characters are important in the great American novel, the literary novels, the upper literary novels,
Right. Yeah.
what we think. Yeah. We have no book shaming here. Okay. I don't care what people read. Just read it, people. But
I'm saying I'm a reformed snob. Like, I'm sure when I was a young English major, it was like I'm trying to get all these classics under my belt. I feel there was a pressure to read certain things, and so I avoided certain genres without seeing their potential. And horror, any genre can be as literary as literary. I mean, really, as far as getting after something big. I mean, Moby Dick is a horror novel, really. I mean, you have this almost supernatural whale, and all of this symbolism has been put in this whale since, right? And it's after big things about life and passions and whatnot.
I think our tastes change as we grow older too, or we've read that and we've done that. And you go back and you read something again and you get a completely different perspective on it, or more about the author. So it contributes to that. But aside from your experience writing, what other things do you think contributed to that authenticity? Like, because those conversations between the family and things were just amazing. Isaac's journey to stop drinking with the was very real.
Well,
And yeah.
Well, to be forthcoming, I am in recovery myself, and I wrote, actually I wrote in 2020. There was something going on in 2020. I forget what it was. Starts with a C.
Just forget what it was.
Yes, absolutely. But so yeah, I was largely, I'm not going to classes to teach. We're teaching online. A great deal of my time is spent on the computer. Online teaching is kind of very transactional. Something comes in, you grade it, you comment on it. It's a different form of teaching, not without its merits, but still, I was adjusting to it. I had a lot of downtime. So in 2020, I wrote 2 novels. I wrote Rules of Order, and then in the fall, I wrote The Dance of Rotten Sticks. And I think I was internally coming to the conclusion of, like, I need to quit this. I need to quit with the drinking every day. I need to quit with waking up every day with at least a slight hangover, if not a full-blown hangover. I was never I don't know, people in my life might say otherwise, but I don't think I was ever a hostile drunk. I mean, I was mainly just kind of damaging myself. And coming from a family where there was a lot of alcoholism. So I was playing with fire. And I think Isaac's journey to quit, he was like one step ahead of me. He was almost kind of my guide into the needing to quit. And as I watched him become a better father, it made me want to. Now, this didn't happen immediately, but in the spring of 2021, April 19th, I had my last drink. And so it was a very personal, the things that he experiences when he's drinking, when he's thinking about it, the guilt he carries when he knows he's, because there's no, at least from my perspective, alcohol is always dampening, no matter how much you consume. But the way I was consuming, it's always dampening your personality. It's always dampening your engagement with the world in some way. Even if you are tricked by the euphoria of it, which is telling you, no, you're more engaged. Look, you're laughing. But it's all the it's the dance of rotten booze. It tricks you into thinking. And it is keeping you from life. And it was keeping Isaac from truly rising to the occasion of what, yes, he lost his wife, but 3 children, the oldest being 15, lost their mother. And for a while, he's just letting the 15-year-old daughter be the mother and the father as he kind of checks out. And I think at least going to the island made him realize that. And see, like, I can't do this, as much as he wants to continue with that. So that is a big personal aspect of the novel. And I worried about even how it would be received. I worried, am I writing something that is too literary for horror and too horror for literary, that nobody's going to want to read this thing?
Well, no, I did. I'm all important.
I appreciate it.
I don't think so. You're wrong, Jeff.
I'm happy to be. That won't be the first one.
First of all, congratulations. And I find that story so amazing that he was your guide. That, obviously there was something subconscious or whatever within you that was telling you to write Isaac, right? Like
Right.
that was coming up. And I just find that an incredible story on its own. So now we need the memoir where you write that story of the story behind. Because I'm it. But no. I mean, there are different kinds of horror. And there is the terrifying, just like movies for the people. So your horror story is a thinker, because not that the others don't think, but never mind. I'm just going to skip over trying to apologize for that. There is different. I consider your story more a ghost story, okay, as a separate genre. There are other creepy and crawlies in there, but it is a ghost story. It is from a long tradition of campfire ghost stories, right? And
Right.
ghost stories are about pasts. That you can't have a ghost story without a horrible incident in history or whatever. So that always makes you think and reflect. I think ghost stories are very reflective. So I think it was the proper amount of reflection. And to live this experience, this family went through a horrendous thing. So coming back to Ashley, she never had time to grieve. But I so appreciate her character because, and there are some like this, and I'm not knocking all things, but we have gotten there is a thing where people have gotten very comfortable just making the teenager obnoxious, right? Just making the teenager whatever. And Ashley is not like that. She takes on responsibility, and she does finally get mad because she's hurt and she's been dealing with all of this. So I think Ashley is a standout character. I think they all are. And whether you might like them or there are characters mother-in-law that I still haven't quite decided what I consider about her or not. Like, I'm not sure she took the right role. You have to read the book, people. Go get the book.
I don't think it's a spoiler, though, to say that the mother-in-law is concerned enough that she wants to
she
take
is
children
concerned
away.
enough, but I don't think she should trust her grieving either, because she wants her daughter back and she can't have her daughter back. So it's very easy there were other ways to help him.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Right.
He became hostile because that was a hostile situation.
Mm-hmm.
So that wasn't the best way. Yelling at him was not the best way, I don't think, to go into this situation.
I don't think any of them are acting, because I think they're all in some ways carrying this unacknowledged wound, or this unhealed wound. It's still bleeding in a way because they haven't dealt with it, or they haven't been able to. So they're all acting out of this kind of more than grief. They're almost in the denial or anger stage, in a way.
It is. And so you also wrote a horror movie that can make people cry about the relationship of the family. And that's not a bad thing. But okay, I have to say this. I am overjoyed by the fact that there's going to be a sequel to this book. That's the first thing I asked, because it sort of ended unfinished, and some horror movies and books do that. They always leave that little finger moving on the dead body or something.
Right.
So
Yep.
it could be finished or it could not be finished. And authors like to say, well, the reader's imagination will finish it. I'm glad you're not doing that, because I want more.
Yes. And I think that final chapter, which I'd almost call an epilogue because it's pretty brief, but that final chapter that hints at there's likely more to come. I didn't do anything with that for a long time. I left it so I could revisit these characters if I want to. But originally the ending was the ending and there was no epilogue. And
I wouldn't have liked that.
And I'm glad that I thought the horror was a one-off. I didn't even know if I'd be able to do anything with it. I was so happy to have Montag Press want to publish it, because I don't bring any reputation as a horror writer, but Montag Press it's a micro press. It's small. And so they do focus on horror, and they had published my book, Rules of Order, which was a dystopian. So yeah, the sequel has been a true joy, but I didn't, even though I left it open-ended, I didn't jump into it until I started this fall. So here it is, 4 years after.
You have an autumn thing with your horror writing.
Yeah, I must. And then it was really going quite slowly, because writing a sequel, I'd never done that before. So there's a chapter in there, chapter 3 in the sequel, which I call the bridge chapter, because I had to deal with, okay, how do I bring up aspects of what happened in the first book without having a reader going, I've read this, like, what are you doing? Like, I know this, I read it, but I also want this book, which so far is called Shadows of the Witness Tree. And I wanted it to still be somewhat standalone. So I had to bring up aspects of what happened in the past. But in the sequel, the past is quite far in the past. The sequel takes place 11 years after the ending of Dance of Rotten Sticks.
So like all of the kids are in they're in their 20s. So are we going to see how they developed as human, like as people? Is there still going to be some growth? Like, do they have trauma from that time? Have they healed as a family together?
They've healed, and actually in a phone call, Ashley and Isaac talk about, what they've been through, and Isaac talks about how are we even functioning based on what happened on those 3 days, and especially that one night where we were on the island and these crazy events happen, crazy, scary, all of which people could find out in the Dance of Rotten Sticks, what happens. But yes, he's talking about that. And Ashley has since been in psychology, and she talks about how she interned with a VA hospital and had to do intakes, and talks about, she was like, Dad, a lot of people have been through stuff and eventually go back to worrying about their 401ks and making themselves breakfast. Like, life goes on. There's a lot of trauma in the world. Ours might be unique, but people persevere. And I think setting it 11 years later lets me off the hook a little bit, because clearly they have done some healing. So it doesn't have to be something that they're constantly reminded of. A few times in the sequel, though, he has thought of Gwen, his wife, who passed away at the beginning of the Dance of Rotten Sticks.
Well, so, good for him.
Yeah, he's still, I mean, he doesn't see anybody else. He hasn't really started other romantic relationships. So there are things that still trigger the memories of losing her.
And so the idea, I mean, because one of the possibilities is you could have had them going on because they are obviously gifted in, paranormal type ways, these children, or it was because they were so close to death that they were able to make the connections that they did with the other world.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I explore, the idea that some characters are more open, they're more likely to be conduit into that world. Definitely Emily is more than just, there's more to her than just the fact that it was her 11th birthday, where the actor,
Oh, yeah, definitely.
she's I don't know, touched in a way from not, functions between the worlds in some ways, and I would say probably Carson does too. That he is,
I would think so,
a conduit. But yeah, in the interim between the two books, not a great deal has happened. Primarily, what they're dealing with now is Emily's anxiety, which is really quite high. And she's 21 years old now in the sequel, and still living in the house with Isaac. Isaac is kind of seeing this kind of what they call failure to launch. These kids who hit adult ages but are not doing adult activities. They're still largely living at home and not making that move out of the nest. So I'm still dealing with some depth there, I think, but instead of alcoholism, kind of around the mystery of anxiety, especially in teens, which I think is just rampant now.
Oh, yeah, no, most definitely. I mean, and I would say that we as older generations haven't helped that. There's realism and then there is doom and gloom, and we haven't given them much hope for the future. Or much. It is so difficult, because that's why it's good to get away from the internet and go camping or go to a cottage, just not on Orphan Island.
Right. Yeah, I think his intentions were good to although I think the mistake he makes from the jump is taking that box of booze along with him. I mean, if his heart was truly to reconnect with his family, he would have left the booze at home, and instead he justifies why he took it.
There wasn't a lot of hardcore thinking behind that decision. Okay.
Right.
It was the idea that if we just change places, everything will be fine. It was one of those, I think.
And he has to kind of watch, in a way, his brother do with the kids, because his brother comes with them, the uncle. And in a way, he has to sit and watch his brother almost be a surrogate father. And yeah, he struggles with that. Like, a lot of what he hoped would happen doesn't happen. I do see a question in the chat, and
I'm not seeing any. Okay, go ahead.
Quite a few comments, but
why am I not getting comments? Okay, go ahead and read the question.
Somebody asked, is that snow behind me? And no, that's kind of a Jackson Pollock kind of rip-off painting that I did to decorate the house. But somebody else asked, the Dance of Rotten Sticks is an intriguing title. This is from Robin. Was interested, how did you come about picking such a title? And it's actually a line from a Theodore Retke poem. And it always intrigued me. And it actually is apropos to what goes on in the book. The line is, "Wake me, witch, we'll do the dance of rotten sticks." And for whatever reason, that line, it's not like My Papa's Waltz or better known Retke poems, but that line always stayed with me. And then when the idea for this book came about and the goings on in the book, the "Wake me, witch, we'll do the dance of rotten sticks," was kind of perfect. And a nod to Retke, who is, a literary hero of Michigan, a Pulitzer Prize winning poet from Saginaw, who interestingly returned to Saginaw quite a bit to do his writing. You know, a lot of times you'll have somebody famous, they're born in a house, but then they go elsewhere to do their things. Retke, you know, he was writing about his father's greenhouses and the flower business. He wrote a lot of kind of nature-based poems from those experiences growing up with his father. You know, we don't all grow up with a football field of greenhouses behind our house. And so he was inspired by that. And I think he knew that's where the poems are. The poems are home. I know this isn't about me, but I think it's still an interesting story. When Retke won a Guggenheim Award, where most writers would take off to Europe, right? And they'd write in cafes. And Retke used his Guggenheim to come home to Saginaw to write his groundbreaking book, The Lost Son, and other poems. The book that kind of made him, because he got back, excuse the pun, but he got back to his roots, you know, the roots of those plants. That's where he needed to be. So yeah, it was an honor to me to be able to use a line from one of his poems as the title for this book.
And he might have been looking, I mean, he was kind of a sad man as well. From what I was reading.
Absolutely.
And so home would mean stability, right?
Well, he was also a kind of a man child. He needed somebody to take care of the actual day-to-day responsibilities. And that person for a long time in his life was his mother. She doted on him. June Retke, his sister, also lived in the house, and she had recalled to people, so this was a known story. She told people, my mom used to say, June, take your shoes off. Your brother is upstairs writing. Like, don't. So there was some bitterness, but eventually, yeah, he, Retke, I think, ends up marrying somebody who takes that role. And then he doesn't come back to Saginaw as much because he had somebody then to kind of mother him.
And put the buffers up and make sure he had, coffee and whatever he needed.
He needed people around him who revered the act of writing.
Yeah. I mean, he was lucky for that. Not everybody is that lucky, You're cranky.
Absolutely. Right. Yes.
I want to apologize for some reason. When I clicked it again, I had the comments up, but they weren't all coming through. So thank you, Dave, for sharing it to Blue Sky. And people out there, you can follow Fika with Vicky and Jeff Vande Zande on Blue Sky. That's something new. Susan says good show.
Yeah, there's been some nice comments, and I feel forgiven for my technological gap at the beginning. God, did I feel stupid when I was like, oh, something on your end, your end. And then I looked like, oh my God, it's me.
You don't even know what happens here. And just today, everything was so perfect. I was relaxing and it began. It's all part of the adventure and brings us together. Okay. Right. And we do have a tendency towards a nice audience. Did you hear that, guys? You're nice, and that's good. Nice and kind. So we were talking about the poet, and Jeff, Robin, you stole one of my speaking comments. So where are we? I know where I wanted to go, to folklore. Now, I don't want to give the background story, but we're going to say the ghostly background story of this island. Is that a part of the folklore of the area, or is that pure Jeff? You created this folklore?
Yeah, with it's right on the back cover of the book, this idea that this orphanage that they discover on the island is potentially haunted. They'd kind of learned that going in, and readers would know it anyway by looking at the back of the book. So we're not giving anything away, but the orphanage is made up. Lake Coventry is made up. I even had to do some research, like technically, because there's a river on the island. And then I did research and realized that it would have to be a huge island to actually sustain a river, that most smaller islands don't have flowing water on them for whatever reason. So I actually ended up connecting the island to kind of a swampland on the southern shore of which makes it essentially an island. But yeah, I had to do, I do a lot. I check my facts a lot to make sure I'm getting the authenticity. But yeah, the idea behind the story and why the orphanage came to be, and its benefactor that created it and whatnot, that's made up. That's pure me.
That's pure Jeff. Well, you throw kids into any of this and it becomes more intense. Um when you think about, they lost their lives early, or should you trust them? You want to cuddle them, they might have fangs, you
Right.
know what you're dealing with when you're dealing with those kind of things. So we were on the sequel. So how are you finding it? Like you said, you were 17,000 words into it.
Mm-hmm.
When am I going to see it? Bottom line. No. I'm not pushing you. I know. You're a busy guy.
Well, things have definitely, picked up, but it's a weird experience working on a sequel to a book that you don't know if it warrants a sequel. Like in terms of, in the American sense of, this thing's got to make money, because that's always there. I think when you're working as an artist in America, the idea of success is how much money did you make. So I'm watching the sales going like, okay, now there's 150 people who own it or what have you. Does that warrant a sequel?
Well, do you have 150 people owning it?
The last sales check I did, it has sold 190 copies.
Well, what are you complaining about then, Jeff? Because, smaller presses than that, usually the 100's the limit. So you're doing well.
Well, I appreciate it. Because I'm talking with fine people like yourself, and I'm doing everything I can to market this book. I've had 3 television appearances here in Michigan. As I talked about, I will get off the air with you, and within about 15 minutes, I'm driving 2.5 hours north to the Sheboygan Public Library. And Sheboygan is the nearest town to this fictionalized Lake Coventry. So probably Whittico, the little village of Whittico and Lake Coventry and the island, that's all fiction. But everything else is Michigan. And so the people up at the Sheboygan Library were excited, like, oh my God, we can have an author who's actually writing a book about this area. But it's rainy here in Michigan. I could drive 2 hours and 15 minutes to nobody to get back in my car.
And a lot of authors, yeah.
Right. So it's a risk, but that's what you have to do to get the book out there, because I think people think the hard part is writing the book, and I feel the hard part is doing anything with it once it's finished.
That is a common, and we cannot bring it up enough, because people do not understand that writers tend to be observers. So lots of them don't like to be out there on that camera or, doing that stuff. So it's a difference. It takes time away from writing, but it is such a necessary job. Even if you're with a bigger publisher now, you still have to do your own
I think marketing
public,
and promotion largely falls on the author. And questions agents have are like, well, what's your follower count on Twitter? What it's almost like that is the question before, what did you write?
This needs to stop. Okay, I'm getting so tired of this. I don't have a lot, because I always tailed onto my husband's in life, because I'm not big at I can promote the show, but if you don't, like right now, Blue Sky is a good place to be, because it's just starting.
Right.
And everybody wants to be friends with everybody because they just want to get the numbers there. But I don't care if someone has 200 followers or, 24,000. If the book is good, that's what we should be looking at. And if the book is good, we should want them to if the book is good, we should want to encourage them to write more. That doesn't show, what what a good person is. So, or a good writer is. I just get so frustrated that,
Yeah.
you know,
That's that American thing that I talked about earlier, is we're just in a bad way, we're just fascinated with numbers and how many did you sell? How much did you make? How, it's like, and as opposed to what part of your heart did you tap into to write this thing? Where did that come from? Like, and what's the human experience of that? But I mean, we could talk about that for a long time. I don't know if it's of interest other than to
oh,
say
no, we have other things to talk about, other things that you've done, but it is, or maybe we should, I don't know. Followers are currency all unto themselves.
right.
That it's just, I know that from my husband at one point had 54,000 on Twitter or whatever for no apparent reason other than he got bored of playing Call of Duty. And this was his new thing, right? And people used to call him the most famous non-famous person because there was. So anyhow, when you have that, people will call you, oh, we'll give you free tickets to this, or we'll give you free tickets to that, because they want you to put on your Twitter, I'm going here or whatever. So he's done with Twitter now, and I've given him leadway on Blue Sky, like, go do this for me, okay? Provide, because you will be taken more seriously. You will, I mean, that's just the way people are thinking at this time.
I see a lot of it too, and it's a strange thing that writers do, where they're trying to have more followers than people they follow, and it's like, and I don't mean this in a negative way, because I'm a nobody too, but it's like you're a nobody. Nobody knows about who you are. Why do you care what your ratio is, that you're more followed than you are
Encourage
following?
them.
Right. But it goes back to what we were talking about with the sequel. I find my motivation to work on it sometimes is based on whether or not I see that the Amazon sales rank has improved, where it sends this message to me like, okay, yes, the Dance of Rotten Sticks has legs. People are reading it, they're buying it, the reviews have been largely pretty good. Suddenly my heart is full and I'm pouring out words. Then I'll go 3 or 4 days and there's no sales, or I don't have any events. And then suddenly I find like, well, why am I even writing this? What's the point? Nobody is interested in this book. And I got to get to the point where I realize, write it for yourself. Just write it.
Well, that's it. You have to write the story that's in you to write. Like this time you wrote a horror story.
Right.
But this is my frustration with authors on a personal level. I know some, and I want to do another show with them. And I'm refusing to, because they feel like they have to really sell the first one before they put the second one out, right? Like they keep promising, but they keep working on this. Now, the people that I've seen that are doing well, they just keep writing. It's done. It's in the can. I'm moving on.
Right.
Because it takes, I think it takes like 3 years for a book to really be known out there. Like a lot of work and a lot of punching and shoving and doing what you need to do to get that done. So you may not see it for a while, and it's that second book that comes out. And also with, if you mark it as a series or whatever, people want to see that second one, because they do get burnt by not getting that second novel out there, right? So I think it's good that you're doing it now, and I think you have to do it now. But you can't let that stop you, Jeff. You cannot look at those numbers and let that stop you.
I'm going to try to I'm getting to the point with it where it serves me, the writing of it serves me in a way that I don't care anymore about, absolutely anybody listening, go out and buy the Dance of Rotten Sticks. You're going to fuel me. But I am getting to the place where it's like, no, I'm 17,000 words in. This story kind of has me now. I want to know where it goes, and I'm going to write it for me. I'm a creative person. I need an outlet, and this gives me something I can work on. And I think, Vicky, by the time the winter semester ends, which would be end of April, I should have a draft. And for me, that's when the writing really begins. I love rewriting. Right now I call it putting my clay on the wheel. You know, I'm allowing it to be lumpy and messy because I just have to I can't make the pot till I have the clay on the wheel. And I start making the pot once I start rewriting it. I have that first draft, and now I can create subsequent drafts. So there's been moments of writing the sequel, and I'm like, these sentences aren't going to change. These are beautiful. And other places were like, where did this garbage come from? But it's a placeholder. I will return to it in another version of myself in June or July, and I can work out the kinks then. But that's my advice to anybody working on a novel, is allow yourself to write it poorly first, or you'll probably never write it.
It's necessary because there's so many little details, like what kind of car are they driving, or all of this stuff that if you stop to figure that out at the beginning while you're working on it, you're never going to get it done. David would like to know, as a fan of nautical history, he lives in the heart of many shipwreck history. Has he ever incorporated that into his story?
I have not, even though I am very aware of it. And this is, I might be damaging them, but my children and now my grandchildren have all been sung to sleep multiple times by the song, The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Be careful, because I might sing the whole thing for you right now. I know it by heart, but I don't want to put everybody to sleep. I think it's a lullaby, and you know, my girlfriend will be like, "That's it's really, if you listen to the lyrics, you know, it's a terribly sad song to be singing to little children." And maybe that's what makes them go to sleep. It's just a coping mechanism. They're like, the only way I'll escape this sadness is to go unconscious. But yeah, definitely the Great Lakes there's actually a great book by a Michigan writer that I would recommend after The Dance of Rotten Sticks. It's called The Living Great Lakes. It is, if you are interested in the history of the Great Lakes, it is so wonderfully written. It's called The Living Great Lakes. Check that one out. It's such I loved returning to reading it each night.
Yes, David, he sings it as well. I know the words. I couldn't roll my eyes when Jeff said it. We don't have to share everything.
Get Dave in here. We're gonna do a chorus of this.
Oh no! The shanty time. You'll have to meet. We're not that far away. So okay, so you do everything that you do is sort of about communication, the filmmaking, the poetry, the you teach people to communicate. So when it comes to because I watch those films on the library. If you put short films, Jeff Vande Zande, in the search, they will take you to the library, and you were doing a show with your films there.
Right.
And there was 1 minute films, and those 1 minute films gave such a clear message. I was just amazed. I'm also, if I want to go up the steps backwards, I'm going to do that if my soul tells me now. So what is the most important thing you think about getting a clear message across?
I think, well, especially with films, the payoff is in the ending with a short film. I tell my students a short film functions a lot like a joke, in that the payoff is in the end. It's not that all short films are funny, but there's a setup and then there's a payoff. And I think getting that down, which I do think I have down for the short films, that quoting a line from the movie adaptation, wow them in the end. You can make mistakes along the way, but wow them in the end, and you got a hit. Not that I've had any hits, but yeah. So I do think a story is a strength of mine. I don't know if it's because I grew up with a father who was a writer, but yes, I grew up with an avid storyteller, and I think there's just a certain way that stories move, and it either works or it doesn't. And it sounds to me like you felt that the films worked.
I did. I especially that one, I was like, wow, that that really listen to your own intuition, people. That's what I got.
Yeah, I think you're talking about the film Exposure, where the guy is trying to stop all of his OCD habits. And as it turns out, those habits were actually keeping a monster at bay.
Yes, yes. That was very insightful into people's mind. Okay, so we were going to you have to get onto the library. David, I was going to ask him to read a poem. So I know that you said you haven't written a poem for a while, but do you have one there?
I do have.
Okay. So we'll just take Robin's question and then we'll go to the poem. I find authors are very much like artists. Instead of paint and charcoal, they use words and stories to create worlds. Do you enjoy other things? What you enjoy and other things will follow. I agree.
Absolutely.
There's so much more that you're getting out of this, Jeff, as you know, than those followers and those coins.
Well, I did pick out a short poem called Toddler Classes. It was about when I was a young father taking my son to the community swimming pool for his swim lessons. And it's ironic, or whatever word you want to call it, because my son now is 25 and has his own son, my grandson. But this is called Toddler Classes. Waist deep in the community pool, I adjust my grip on my son's slick skin. We're both here because he's on the far edge of 18 to 36 months. They won't learn to swim, the instructor tells us, a sweet girl from the local high school swim team, someone's daughter. We just want them to enjoy the water. Has her father seen her lately? What does he really know anymore? 16 and she's already directing a shallow end of shivering adults. Parents blow bubbles too, she says, or hold them behind their necks, or let them know you're there. Front floating above my hands, my son can't stop smiling. While the others are only kicking, he's already groping his arms into something like a dog paddle. The instructor floats by, tells me he's probably ready for the preschool classes. I want to tell her that I just got here, that I'd like to stay for a while with my fingers snug between the ripple of his ribs, my hand nearly covering his chest. Above my other palm, though, I feel the pump and pedal of his comical little legs. He's ready, she says again. And even as I shake my head, I can feel the way he sometimes makes the water work for him, as though if I'd ever let go, he'd start to swim away.
See, now I can see how that person that wrote that poem had those authentic family relationships in the book.
I wrote, the bulk of my poetry, well, a good part of it was about driving, because I was driving 500 miles a week to 3 different colleges to cobble together a living as an adjunct instructor until I got this full-time position. But then family took over, and I wrote a lot about family and my children and how it changes you, et cetera. And
do you ever read your poetry to them?
They've read it. I don't necessarily read it aloud to them, but they've read it, and they know the poems that are about them. But I mean, that one wrote itself. I mean, it's probably 80% accurate to that day when I was in the pool with him, and the instructor did say, like, I think he's ready. And I was just like, I'm not. I don't want him to go.
No.
This just started. What do you mean? And now I go to my son and his girlfriend's apartment, and there he is with, little Grayson. And it's just like, oh my God, the cycle continues. I mean, that little guy's going to start to swim away from me too.
Oh no, it just keeps going, and it goes quickly. It goes
Right.
very quickly.
Yeah.
So, Jeff, thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing what you did about the books with us. And you're welcome anytime. Just knock on the door. Come back if you want to discuss your other books. But I really want to discuss the sequel.
I'm working on it. I swear I'm working on it.
So thank you so much. I had a great time.
I did too. Thank you. And thanks to everybody listening. And if anybody takes a chance on the book, I would greatly appreciate it. And I don't know how much I'm allowed to plug, Vicky, but people.
Oh yes, plug away. I was so the poem was, I didn't. Now we're messing with that beautiful poem with.
Yeah, we got to go back to capitalism here, but the easiest way to get the Dance of Rotten Sticks is on Amazon. You can type in that title, the Dance of Rotten Sticks, or JC Vande Zande, but probably the Dance of Rotten Sticks is easier. And it is only $2.99 on Kindle.
I was going to say it's a really remarkably low price. I mean, definitely less than a cup of coffee, that one.
Right. So I would be so thankful for anybody who, as a result of listening to this, despite my technological gaffes in the beginning,
let it go, Jeff.
Would take a chance on the book.
Was they forgotten all about that?
I know. I don't. Like I'm a people pleaser. So in my head, I'm still like, everybody turn the radio off. Me.
You take care, okay? And hopefully we'll see you soon. And best of luck with people. You really, it's good. It's a horror book / literary novel. Right. I really think that's what it is, and it's great. So you take care, and we'll talk to you later. Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Bye. Oh, I cut him off. Okay. Next week, our guest will be Mark Niekamp, and we'll be discussing his book, Energy Magic. Be prepared to regain your power. Until then, may your coffee be hot and your story sweet. Thanks for listening, everyone.